Good morning and welcome to our gathering today at First Unitarian Universalist Church of Stockton. We continue our virtual series, which will be continuing through the end of May at least. And we are glad that you are joining us and hope you will find here what you are seeking. We are a community of individuals holding many different beliefs, coming from many different places, and each progressing on our own journeys of life and faith. We join together in our commitment to care for humanity and to shape a better, healthier, more hopeful world. We promise to accept and encourage all those persons of goodwill who gather here, recognizing that we all continue to grow and learn throughout our lifetimes. We especially welcome and stand with LGBTQ persons, even as we seek to welcome all persons of every age, ability, status, and shade of skin. We strive to make our community a place of peace and acceptance, love and nurture, even as we challenge ourselves and others to live more faithfully according to the values of Unitarian Universalism.
Our opening words today are from Patrick Murphin. Love is the only magic. It enriches the giver as it nourishes the object. It serves the instant and washes over the ages. It is as particular as the moon and as universal as the heavens. If returned, it is multiplied, yet spurned, it is not diminished.
Our chalice lighting today is from the Passover Haggadah. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom.
The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love, hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we
I invite you to greet one another, at least symbolically and virtually, by sending your good energy to those you think of in this congregation. Now I invite you to join in our words of affirmation. Children, if you are there, you know your part. Adults, you know your part. I will read both parts. We believe in love. Love is the only doctrine of this church. We believe in truth. The quest for truth is our sacrament. We believe in helping others, and service is our prayer. We believe in the sacredness of life, to dwell together in peace, seek knowledge and freedom, serve humanity in fellowship, and cherish the earth and its creatures. This do we covenant, each with the other.
As one als Herr der Himmel, die Erde still geküsst, dass sie im Blüten von ihm nur träumen müsst. Die Luft ging durch die Felder, die Herren wuchten sacht. Es rauschten leis die Wälder, so sternklar war die Nacht, und meine Seele spannte weit ihre Flügel aus, flog durch die stillen Lande, als flöge sie nach Haus.
On the Night of the Shooting Star by Amy Hess and Jenny Desmond.
Bunny and Dog live on opposite sides of the fence.
Bunny's house is blue. A sign on the mailbox says, Bunny House, Private. Inside are a table for dining, a bed for sleeping, a lamp for reading, and cocoa. Lots and lots of cocoa.
Dog's house is red. A sign on the door says, Dog here, do not disturb. Inside are a table for dining, a bed for sleeping, a lamp for reading, and biscuits. Lots and lots of biscuits.
Every morning, first thing, Bunny looks through the fence and the tall grass at Dog.
And every morning, first thing, Dog looks through the fence and the tall grass at Bunny. No one says hello, or hi, or nice to see you today.
Bunny hops and nibbles all through the day. She plants a carrot seed here and there, and peeks at Dog. When night comes, she sips cocoa in bed and reads. Now and then, she checks on the light in the window of the little red house.
Dog skips and sniffs all through the day. He hides his ball and digs it up and peeks at Bunny. When night comes, he munches on biscuits in bed and reads. He checks on the light in the window of the little blue house.
Seasons come, seasons go.
No one says hello, or hi, or let's have a picnic today.
One sleepless night, Bunny goes out to the yard to watch the stars above the little red house. Dog's house. Dog needs a friend, she thinks. Who could be Dog's friend? The stars are dim but beautiful that night.
On the other side of the fence that very night, Dog watches the moon above the little blue house. Bunny's house. Bunny needs a friend, he thinks. Who could be her friend? The moon is beautiful, and the stars.
All at once, the night sky brightens. A shooting star.
Zip! And then it's gone.
Bunny looks at Dog.
Dog looks at Bunny,
They had seen a shooting star.
but now it's gone.
Back in the little blue house, Bunny lies under the table and thinks about Dog and their shooting star. She thinks for a long time.
In the little red house, Dog sits on the chair and thinks about Bunny and their shooting star. He thinks for a long time.
On the night of the shooting star, 2 doors open.
Bunny carries cocoa in cups carefully to the fence, where Dog is waiting with a basket full of biscuits.
I could be your friend, says the one.
Yes, please, says the other.
They get to work digging a hole under the fence. In time, it is just the right size for one to slip through, and just the right size for the other.
The cocoa is hot, the biscuit sublime.
They had seen a shooting star, and now it is gone. But for the rest of their days and nights, Bunny and Dog are exceptional friends. The end.
At this time in our service, we share milestones in our lives by lighting candles of joy and concern. I have 2 candles of concern that have been requested to light. One is for Clark, who has had a couple of surgeries on his eyes and hopefully is recovering by now. The other is for Rebecca and her family, with daughter Karen having cancer surgery. And I ask that you all keep them in your thoughts and prayers, and that you go ahead and light candles of joy and concern for other matters that you're aware of as we take a moment or two of silent thought, prayer, and meditation. We do send out our good energy to all those that have needs, especially in this time of quarantine for COVID-19. We send our good thoughts to everyone in our community and all the people we know around the world who are challenged by this time. We also send our good energy and support to those with whatever needs they may have. We join our voices in celebration for those birthdays and anniversaries and other celebrations that are going to be very quiet this year. We send out all our good thoughts to those in need. We celebrate the goodness of this congregation, the opportunity that we have together when we gather, and through other ways when we're not able to gather, to support each other, listen to each other, hear each other's stories, and be there to support each other. We give thanks for this community. Amen. Our responsive reading today is number 638. It's from Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 13. It's entitled, Love. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and angels but do not have love, I'm a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and knowledge, and if I have faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body to be burned, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. Prophecies will come to an end, tongues will cease, knowledge will come to an end. We know in part, we prophesy in part, but when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. Now we see in a mirror, in a riddle. Then we will see face to face. Now I know in part, then I will know fully. Now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love. At this time in our service, we share our gifts and offerings. If you have a pledge to send in or wish to give a contribution, please send it to our church office at 2737 Pacific Avenue, Stockton, California, 95204. Matthew, verses 34 to 40. But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they came together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. "Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law?" And he said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment, and a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets." Loving our neighbors. The expectation of loving our neighbors is the second of what Jesus reported to have called the Great Commandments. The same expectation appears in all the other major world religions in some fashion. In many places, religions, including Christianity, explicitly call out for love and care of foreigners and sojourners, visitors and immigrants, neighbors. As Trump closes our national borders, supposedly to protect us from the COVID-19 virus, of which we already have the most cases in the world, it seems appropriate to consider how we have been loving our neighbors in this country, and specifically in our state and city. Loving neighbors is not always easy. If we are quiet and self-contained introverts, and our neighbors are gregarious and boisterous, we may be disturbed by the noises they make. If they have different food preferences than we do, we may not like to smell their cooking. If they smoke or use drugs or have body odor, we may not like the ways that they disturb our olfactory preferences and sense of peace. If they are homeless and just camping out in our neighborhood, we may not like it. if they are from a different culture or speak another language rather than our own, or if they have a different color of skin than ours, we may not like how they differ from us. For any number of reasons, neighbors might make us uncomfortable. Why aren't they just like us? Yes, if our neighbors were just like us, we would love them. It's just those neighbors that differ from us too much that we want to get rid of. If they are poor and we are well off, they really don't fit in our neighborhood, do they? If we are white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, we shouldn't have to put up with blacks and Latinos and people from Southeast Asia who may not even be Christian, should we? Jesus must have intended to say we should love our neighbors as long as they are just like us, right? But that isn't the way it's reported. He just said we should love our neighbors as ourselves. He didn't say we should love our neighbors as long as they are just like ourselves. As Trump has tried to keep out anyone he doesn't like, it has been amazing to watch people who call themselves Christians fall all over themselves singing his praises. Of course, there is a history of people calling themselves Christian, ignoring most of what we believe Jesus said. The Ten Commandments are quoted and displayed by more churches than the Great Commandments. A punishing, vindictive God threatens so-called Christians of many traditions if they don't adhere to the rules of their leaders and elders. I do believe religions continue to evolve. Our religion certainly has evolved. When the new rules contradict the old rules and expectations so blatantly, I often wonder who's being served and who benefits. When Christians support someone with multiple marriages and divorces, multiple bankruptcies, someone who is a morally bankrupt, chronic philanderer, I wonder what those Christians hate so much about progressives and women and persons of color. Is it that they are closer to doing what Jesus actually said, rather than what their leaders and elders want them to act upon? Many people think it is about abortion and homosexuality, which Jesus didn't talk about at all. He merely said to love our neighbors as ourselves. He didn't even tell his followers to hate the Pharisees or the Sadducees or women or, well, anyone. But I'm sure those good Christian leaders must know best because, like Trump, they keep telling us how good and smart they are. It's been more than a quarter century since I stopped calling myself a Christian. I just couldn't make sense of how being a Christian could fit with the religion of Jesus, which I generally still try to follow, at least by way of his teachings. I have tried to love all of my neighbors, not that I'm always successful, because some people are hard to love, hard to understand, hard to get to know, and probably I'm one of them. But I continue to try to love all my neighbors because I believe it is the right thing to do. The thing that Jesus and so many other religious exemplars have taught throughout human history. It always seems strange to me to hear Christians calling for wars and hatred of any groups of people, but that is essentially what is happening now and has happened too often throughout history. In this worldwide crisis over COVID-19, it seems strange that rather than working together, we have been competing over who has the best test and who can come up with treatments and ventilators and make the most money. But that's apparently where our society is today. Trump refused the tests approved by the World Health Organization, probably because they were being made in Germany, and is now stopping payment of our promised support for the WHO. Rather than competing to see what corporations can make more money over in this worldwide disaster, it seems to me that we should have done more to work with other nations and with the United Nations. Now Trump is encouraging individuals to rebel against their state-imposed restrictions, to demand that stay-at-home orders and business closings would be ended, rather than taking responsibility for the crisis as allowed by the Constitution. After wrongly claiming he has all the power, he's now encouraging his followers to rebel against their own state governors. Obviously, he has little or no concern for what doctors and other scientists are saying about the reasons for waiting, and obviously he has little concern over any individual other than himself. So now we also have the challenge of trying to love our neighbors even if they won't wear masks and won't abide by the safety restrictions that have been put in place to help ease this crisis. This kind of double-dealing, chaos-creating behavior by Trump is really unbelievable. Or perhaps it is too believable over a man who chose bankruptcy 6 times to avoid paying workers and creditors, who cheated on his wives before divorcing them. We really need an adult to run crisis response, someone who will make good decisions. We need someone who actually loves his or her neighbors. Between the COVID-19 crisis, the recent overwhelming focus on money, especially the short-term bottom line, the willingness to sacrifice people rather than provide a safety net, and the amount of corporate socialism practiced by our nation, we've become a far different nation from what I grew up believing we were. We used to be the big-hearted nation that would help build and rebuild the nations of the world. The home and largest sponsor of the United Nations, the place for refuge for the people around the world who were in danger. We used to be the good guys. Today, I don't recognize the nation we have become. I don't see the love of neighbor that Jesus called for. And I don't see the open arms and open doors that I thought we had. Loving our neighbors is not just something we are called to do individually toward the people in the homes around us. Loving our neighbors is a matter of justice and compassion toward all the people in the world. We are not fulfilling the commandment if we allow our nation to focus on the wealth of corporations such that it forgets about the needs of people, both of those who live here and those knocking on our doors. It's too easy for the wealthy and corporations to control the message, to make us forget our responsibility to humanity. But we are called to love our neighbors as ourselves. When our neighbors are stopped by police for driving while black or Latino, or for asking for too much help, or for living in parks because there are no opportunities, no jobs open to them, we are still called to love our neighbors as ourselves. When people are demeaned as welfare cheats because they had no opportunity to get out of poverty, we are called to love our neighbors. When the victims of our nation's policies toward Central American nations and the victims of brutal U.S.-controlled corporations come knocking on our doors in hope of escaping violence and poverty, we are called to love our neighbors. When a crisis like COVID-19 affects the whole world, the great wealth of our nation should be used to love our neighbors. Ordinary Americans have been convinced to act against their own self-interests and the interests of people around the world by too many con men. Corporations spend billions of dollars getting us to buy all sorts of things we don't need and often don't even want. They spend millions getting their way with elected officials. They make senators and representatives rich and indebted to them, obliged to create and vote on legislation to benefit corporations. Our government does not represent the people. It represents the corporations and wealth that turn elections. It's Far too much corporate money supporting elections. Corporations and elected officials and the wealthy of our nation love money, not neighbors. In simpler times, when many of us were growing up, there was still some truth to the myth of America being a welcoming and open place where anyone could succeed, where anyone could have a good life. Now ours is a nation of closed doors and closed minds and closed hearts. This COVID-19 has been a revelation about modern life. Neighbors who have lived near each other are meeting each other for the first time, talking over fences and in the streets, albeit from at least 6 feet apart and wearing masks. We've been so busy working and buying stuff and working to support our buying habits that we don't know our neighbors. We've been so good about supporting the consumerist myths created by corporations that we are more oriented to stuff than to people. Too many of us are ready to end the quarantine, not because it is safe, but because the economy has been suffering. If we learn anything from COVID-19, it should be that it is people and relationships that matter. It isn't the size of our houses or the fanciness of our cars and boats. It's about our neighbors and the love we show them. It is time we take back our nation from the corporations, that we vote for persons who will represent the needs of people. We don't need sound bites and slogans. We need relationships with people who will love our neighbors in our cities, our states, our nations, and the world. We don't need a violent revolution, but we need a revolution of awareness, a revolution of moral responsibility, a revolution of love. As we end this time, I encourage us all to love our neighbors. Neighbors with masks and those without. Neighbors in nearby homes and neighbors in distant countries. Neighbors living in mansions and neighbors living on the streets. Neighbors who are straight and those who are LGBTQ or whatever. Neighbors who were born here and neighbors without documents. Neighbors who drive while Black or Latino or Asian. Neighbors whom we know, and neighbors anywhere and everywhere else. And maybe our world will be better for the love that Jesus and other religious exemplars told us to share with each other. Go out in love, be at peace, be safe, and practice revolutionary love. Shalom, salam, blessed be, namaste, and amen.
Love makes a bridge from heart to heart and hand to hand. Love finds a way when laws are blind and freedom banned. Love breaks the wall of language, gender, class, and age. Love gives us wings to slip the bars of every cage. Love lifts the hopes that force and fear have beaten down. Love breaks the chains and gives us strength to stand our ground. Love rings the bells of wanted birth and wedding day. Love guides the hand that promise more than words can say. Love makes a bridge that winds may shake yet not destroy. Love carries faith through life and death to endless joy.
And now hear these closing words. I invite you to join hands virtually with all those from this congregation and all those you'd like to invite, remembering that this church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences, beneath all our diversity, there's a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together, in spite of time, and death and the space between the stars. We pause in silent witness to that unity. May the blessing of love be upon you. May love's peace abide with you. May love's presence illuminate your hearts now and forevermore. Amen.